Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be going over Rainbow Six Siege's Europe League playoffs for stage number 2 of 2023. As you can see, the clips are back, and thankfully CGG is back, making my life a bit easier. It seems like people like having the clips on the screen rather than having something else like the stats on the screen a bit better. I couldn't get a great consensus just based on the comments, but based on the metrics on the videos, and we'll have to see how this one does as well. But it does seem that the videos with the clips do better than the videos without the clips. As for the playoffs themselves, we have 6 teams playing in 7 matches. The matches will determine not only the standings for the stage, but also which 3 of these 6 teams will definitely be going to the major, and which 3 will have one more shot to make it to the major through the LCQ. And before we get into the matches, maybe you could leave a little like, little sub, maybe a little comment. Thank you. Alright, starting with the quarterfinals, we have Eminem versus Wild, and we see Eminem take Cafe 7-5 and also take Chalet 8-7, closing out the series 2-0. But of course, this was what we call in the business a close 2-0. We did see a max regulation and a max overtime after all. Eminem was quite solid on the entry overall, going +7 with Uzus on 4-1 and Tyrant on 4-0. Uzus also notably going 28-14, giving him a 2.0 KD. And Wild's best player was undoubtedly Pac Bull. He went 24-17 with 5 plants in the only 2 clutches of the series. And on the opposite end of things, Hungry had an absolutely abysmal game, going 5-23 on KD and 1-5 on entry. With how close both of the maps were, you have to imagine that if Hungry had put in a little bit more work, then maybe we could have seen a map 3 or maybe even a 2-0 in Wild's favor. The other quarterfinals matchup was between Wolves and Into the Breach, and we do get to see a third map in this one with Wolves taking the series. Wolves won the first map, Clubhouse 7-2, then Into the Breach won Consulate 7-4, and finally Wolves take Skyscraper 7-1. For Wolves, we see an impressive scoreline from Bibu going 28-13 with a clutch and 2 plants. And for Into the Breach, Kanto, although he only went +3 on KD, he very impressively went 7-0 on entry. And just like we saw in the last match, even though the losing team had a player that played quite well, they also had a player that played pretty poorly. In this case, it was Yonka going 9-22 and 0-4 on entry, not quite as bad as Hungry, but still pretty close. In the past, I mentioned how he's the player on the team that you would least expect to have good stats, but these stats are bad enough that it raises a few eyebrows. Next up, we have the 2 semifinals. The winner of each of these 2 matches will qualify for the major, and then they'll play against each other to determine who places first in the league. The losers of these matches will also play each other. The winner of that will qualify for the major as well, and the loser will go into the LCQ bracket. So we have Virtus Pro versus Wolves. Virtus Pro take this series. They win Chalet 7-3, and they win Clubhouse 8-6. Not a super close match overall. Obviously, there was the one map that went to overtime, but Virtus Pro absolutely dominated Wolves on Chalet. And one of the rounds that Wolves won was a 1v4 clutch by Shinka, so really it should have been a 7-2 victory for Virtus Pro had they not allowed that to happen. For Virtus Pro, we saw a great showing by Dan going 24-12 on KD, 5-2 on entry. Over on Wolves, no real standouts. Shinka, Bibu, and Mowgli did okay. P4 and Deadshot did not so well. One thing to note though is Mowgli had 14 of the 24 entry engagements for his team, although he did only go 7-7. So that qualifies Virtus Pro for the major. Now let's see who gets to go to the major from the other matchup. We have BDS versus Eminem, and the quarterfinals were a 2-0 and a 2-1, and semifinals the same thing. The last one was a 2-0, this one's a 2-1 in the favor of BDS. Eminem does win the first map, Clubhouse 7-4, but then a dominant victory on the second map by BDS, 7-1 on Cafe, and a 7-4 of their own on the third map, Skyscraper. What a monster performance from Shaiko. He went 43-17 in only 30 rounds, giving him a 1.43 KPR. 2 of his teammates had 18 kills each, the other 2 had 15 kills apiece, so add up any 2 of his teammates' kills and he still has way more kills than them combined. And even looking on Eminem, the next closest players in the lobby each have 23, Nafe, Solotov, and Uzus. 20 kills fewer than Shaiko's. And Shaiko is even on pace to beat the best of 3 kill record, which is somewhere around, I want to say 55 or 57. So had this been more of a down-to-the-wire series, which lasted, 40-something rounds instead of 30, Shaiko probably would have beaten the kill record. Certainly would have if he maintained his pace. And at this point, I think Shaiko's the last person on Earth that I would bet against in terms of popping off in a Rainbow Six Siege match. I'll talk about the LCQ seeding match next, even though it was technically the last match that happened. It was originally scheduled to happen on the same day as the 2 semifinal matches, but there was a bit of an uproar in the community about scheduling, so they moved that matchup to later in the week. they did announce what the result was, so I'll mention that, but I don't have anything else to talk about beyond that. My understanding is that at some point they're going to be uploading the video as it was recorded and casted. But for now, I'll just tell you that it was a 2-0 for Wild, and I think unlike in North America, they weren't even playing for any additional prize money, so it was strictly a seeding match. Next up, we have M&M versus Wolves to see which of these two teams is going to advance to Phase 1 of the Major, unlike the other two teams that already qualified to Phase 2, and which team is going to have to fight through the LCQ. And it is Wolves who take this one down 2-0, and pretty dominantly as well. They win 7-4 on Oregon and 7-2 on Chalet. Uses and Nafe, once again the best players on M&M, Uses going +4 on KD, but weirdly going 0-4 on entry, and Nafe went +3 on KD, +2 on entry, and had the only plant for his team. Over on Wolves, no super standouts, but they do have 3 plants across 3 different players, and they also have 5 clutches across 4 different players. At this point, choking XV1s is something M&M is sort of known for. 3 of the clutches came in the first map, which M&M lost by 3 rounds, and none of them were even 1v1 clutches. They were all 1v2 or 1v3. So they should have all been winnable, and it makes you wonder if M&M hadn't let these rounds slip, maybe they could have won map 1 and then gone on to win the series in map number 3. And now let's talk about the final game, which actually had more clutches than the previous one. We have BDS versus Virtus Pro. The map pattern actually holds here because the first match we had a 2-0, then a 2-1, then a 2-0, then a 2-1, and then a 2-0, and now finally a 2-1, and actually one more 2-0 because that LCQ seeding match happened last. I'd say this match was a pretty worthy finale for Europe. We did get to see all 3 maps, but maybe maps 2 and 3 could have been a little bit closer. But anyways, Cafe's pretty back and forth with both teams having a 3-round streak each in regulation. And BDS was the team that managed to reach match point first, going up 6-5, but then another 3-round streak for Virtus Pro closes out the map for them 8-6. We saw 3 clutches in this game, the first one by Leakafek in round number 6 to secure his team a 4-2 lead at the half. The next one by Joystick in round number 10 to bring the game to an even 5-5, and the third one by Dan to push overtime for his team. The next map is Clubhouse, which BDS closes out with a swift 7-1. I guess maybe Clubhouse isn't Virtus Pro's best map at the moment. And we don't see any clutches in this map, but don't worry, we have 4 coming up in the next one. The next map is Oregon, and it looks like it's going to be a blowout. Virtus Pro go up 5-1 after their defensive half, no clutches needed. But in the second half, things get a little bit crazy. Green gets a 1v2 clutch in round number 7, and BDS also take round number 8. And the final 3 rounds are also all clutches. Dan with a 1v2 in round number 9, Renshiro with a 1v1 in round number 10, and finally Shepard with a 1v1 in round number 11 to close out the map 7-4 and secure Virtus Pro first place in EUL for the second stage in a row. So if you were keeping track, 4 of the last 5 rounds were won by a clutch, and of course the last 3 were all won by clutches. At the end of the day, BDS actually won 1 more round in the matchup than Virtus Pro did, but that's the nature of the best of 3. You can get absolutely slammed on one of the maps. As long as you win the other 2, it doesn't matter. We saw another great showing by Shaiko in this matchup, 39-27, flawless 8-0 on entry. And really the rest of the players on BDS didn't do too badly, although all of them were negative on kills. And because of Shaiko's immaculate entry scoreline, his team actually came out ahead in terms of entry by 4 kills. But unfortunately for them, being better on entry and winning more rounds wasn't enough at the end of the day. In general, BDS's stats were better than Virtus Pro's, but I will mention that Virtus Pro did have 1 more clutch than BDS did, and they had 4 more plants than BDS did. The best player for Virtus Pro was always going 33-25, 6-4 on entry, and he was actually the only player on his team with neither a 1vx nor a plant. That does it for all of the matches. I'm not going to go over the bracket like I did in North America. I will throw it up on the screen in case you want to see it in its totality. But since we have CGG back, let's go over just a few stats here. I know I've talked about him a lot this video already, but an incredible performance this stage from Shaiko as per usual. 1.48 rating, 135 kills to 70 deaths, so almost a 2.0 KD. He went 20-8 on entry, so a 2.5 entry KD. And rounding out the other top 5 players for the stage, we have Virtue, Groovy, Packbull, and Dan, but Virtue and Groovy didn't make it to the playoffs, so let's ignore them for a minute. We have Shaiko, Packbull, Dan, Always, and Kanto in terms of the top 5 players that played in the playoffs. Although that is including both their group stage performances and their playoffs performances. And I guess I'll keep up the trend of talking about the map stats just a little bit as well. Clubhouse was the most played map at 7 plays with a 64% defender win rate. Oregon, Border, and Nighthaven Labs also ended up being extremely defender-sided, but they were also 3 of the least played maps. Consulate was also defender favored at 52%, same thing with Skyscraper at 59%, and then we have a few attacker-sided maps, Chalet at 40% for the defenders, Cafe with 45% for the defenders, and Bank with 43% defender win rate. I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this video, so just a very brief recap. Virtus Pro is the top team in EUL, BDS in second place. Both of those teams are going directly to phase 2 of the major, Wolves going to phase 1 of the major, and we have the LCQ coming up. The winner of that will also go to phase number 1 of the major, and I did forget to do a question in my North America video, so let's not forget to do it here. Which team do you think is going to be the final team going to the major from Europe via the LCQ? The favorites are probably G2 or M&M, but who knows, I could see several teams pulling it off. Let me know what you think, and I will catch you guys next time.